With me, I have Risa Groux, who is a functional nutritionist and certified autoimmune coach in private practice in Newport Beach, California. She has always been passionate about nutrition and good health. Today, she is passionate about cooking and creating healthy, nutritious food. And she works with a wide array of clients from professional athletes, adults, and kids to the biggest loser from season 4. Risa works with issues like diabetes, autoimmune disease, cancer, digestion, thyroid conditions, and hormone imbalances, to name a few. She firmly believes that the body can heal itself with whole foods we obtain from the earth, and sees living proof of that in her office each day. Risa looks at root causes using functional nutrition guidelines as well as blood and stool tests. And thank you so much for joining us, Risa.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, great to chat with you and look forward to talking about your book, your wonderful book, which is called FoodFrame. Diet is a 4-letter word, correct?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was going to ask if you could talk about your background. I know you mentioned in your book that you had Hashimoto's, and just if you could talk about that and what led you to write your FoodFrame book.
Yeah, so I do have Hashimoto's, although I'm just about 10 points away from reversing it at this point. And I want to join the crew in my office that have reversed it already. So I'm getting there. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's after I had my second child. I was diagnosed with hypothyroid when I was trying to conceive my second child. No problems with the first. And then we just started having all these issues getting pregnant for the second child, and took a long time. And I did everything. I looked at everything. Why is this that I have this hypothyroid? The doctor handed me a script and said, take this med. You'll take it, every day. And I'm like, so for how long? And he said, oh, no, every day. And I said, well, I mean, for how long do I take it every day? And he said, oh, for the rest of your life. And I thought, isn't that odd? Why would I be taking something synthetic for something that my body was actually born to produce? So that started me on my journey. And I started to put together a little list of why you would become hypothyroid. And then when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I realized this is a pretty comprehensive list. I could not find a list anywhere. So I put my own list together of root causes, because I thought, why is this? My body's in a state of attack. It's just landing on my thyroid for me, but it autoimmune, it lands in different tissues and organs and body parts. So let's see if we can reverse this attack. And so I've compiled a very comprehensive list of root causes. It's in the book FoodFrame. But I have really done extensive research and realized that a lot of it is what we eat. So I've seen thousands of patients and through decades of work that I've been doing. And I first started out and put everybody on this one diet type. It was usually the diet type of the book that I had just recently read, right? Because it had all these great success stories. It had all this science to back up all the success. And I started to slowly realize that not every diet type is right for every person. So while that new diet book comes out and it says, oh, this is the great proven science, and yes, all of those things are probably true, and it's probably going to work for a really good group of people, but it's not going to work for everyone. So I started customizing diet types according to your health status. So FoodFrame is the methodology that I created that basically says that you should be eating according to your current health status. So if you have blood sugar dysregulation, you should be either on paleo or on keto, depending on which one you qualify for. If you've got IBS or IBD, irritable bowel syndrome or irritable bowel disease, or Sibo, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which is very common with thyroid, then you should probably be eating on a low Fodmap plan, at least an elimination diet for a period of time. So I realized that all these different health statuses should be eating according to different diet types. They're all matched up. And so in my book, I've highlighted 6 major diet types or eating lifestyles that I usually refer to. And it usually hits pretty much everybody on the spectrum, regardless of what your health status is. So that is the book. And I wrote the tagline, the subtitle, Diet is a 4-letter word. I really struggled with that one for a long time, but I just couldn't find the right words to say that, diet, we have this horrible relationship with the word diet, and the actual real definition of a diet is what we eat throughout the day. It's not being on this starvation and deprivation and restriction. And I don't like that idea that people feel that they should feel restricted or starving or depriving themselves. I just don't think that's, animals don't do that, right? Oh, I shouldn't eat those berries on that tree, right? They eat when they're hungry. They don't when they're not. So that's the premise of which I base my FoodFrame on.
Yeah, and I do love the title and the subtitle, and it makes sense that not everybody should follow the same exact diet. And I work with the patients, a lot of patients who have Graves' disease and Hashimoto's, which, as you know, are autoimmune conditions, autoimmune thyroid conditions. So I commonly recommend an autoimmune protocol as a starting point. And I know that's one of the recommended diets in the book. But if someone has SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, then they probably shouldn't follow an autoimmune paleo diet, unless maybe if they have autoimmunity as well. That's sometimes it gets complex if there's overlap. But what I'd like you to do is to talk about the different FoodFrame diets, and I know also you mentioned the book, the 4 FoodFrame steps. I don't know which one you prefer to start with, if you want to start with the FoodFrame steps, or if you want to talk about briefly the diets in the FoodFrame diets.
Sure. So the 4 FoodFrame steps are basically find out what your FoodFrame is, right? Either take the quiz on my website at risagrouxnutrition.com, or get your blood work and your stool test done, because that's what I typically do during that first phase, to find out do we have insulin resistance? Because most conventional or allopathic conventional medicine doctors don't typically test for more than just a fasting glucose. Occasionally, they'll test you for hemoglobin A1C, especially if you are overweight or you have some maybe diabetes in the family. But they don't really ever test for C-peptide and insulin, which is what I test every single person for, because I want to see if you're insulin resistant. Because what I do is functional nutrition, and functional nutrition is based on 4 pillars. We look at root causes. So why is this happening? Why am I having headaches? Why is my cholesterol high? Why? It's not because we have a deficiency in statins that brings our cholesterol high, right? We know that's not the case. We also look at prevention. So we're always looking at prevention, and how do you prevent things unless you have the information, right? I always say I'm not really good at playing darts in the dark when I cannot see the light, I cannot see the target. So I need all the lights on, and I need to be perfectly in vision with where I'm aiming. And so we look at prevention, and then we believe that the body is one interconnective unit. So everything has to do with each other. And the 4th thing that I base my practice on is data, right? I have to see what I'm looking at. So I order extensive labs, and insulin resistant is a precursor to prediabetes and diabetes. So therefore I order those. So if you've got a blood sugar dysregulation issue, if you've got fatty liver or congested gallbladder, or if you've got autoimmune or Sibo or all those things, you really have to find out what your particular health status is so that we can match your FoodFrame to it. So after you do that, then you do the detox, the RGN detox, which is super helpful because it cleans out the liver, cleans out the bloods, really optimizes your body so that you are operating much more optimally rather than sluggishly. And we just take out the trash, right? We take out the trash in the body. Yes, you lose weight. Everybody does, but it's not a weight loss program. Everybody loves to come in and do the detox to lose weight, which is fine. It's a side effect of wellness, but we focus on wellness. So we do the detox so it clears things out. Oftentimes, I see this all the time. Yesterday, I probably saw it 3 or 4 times. People complain, their main complaints already go away within those 2 weeks. You're eating real food. You're having collagen shakes. It's not about starvation. Eat when you're hungry, don't when you're not. And then we do the recommended supplements for that health status. If you have blood sugar dysregulation, and we take my berberine balance or whatever it is, vitamin D deficiency, things like that. And then eating healthy food. I have a boatload of recipes on my website, but any food in your FoodFrame category is good to eat, right? and that's how we stay healthy. The FoodFrame book highlights the 6 different diet types. So as you mentioned, low Fodmap, that is for people with Sibo and IBS and IBD, and that is meant to be an elimination diet. So I would recommend that for 30 to 90 days. If you're experiencing any chronic bloating and you realize that it's probably not a deficiency in digestive enzymes, then I would definitely recommend low FODMAP, whether you've been diagnosed with any of those things or not. It's going to help you. It's not calorie restrictive, but it's very portion restrictive for certain types of carbohydrates. So just for your listeners, FODMAP is an acronym, and it stands for fermented oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So in plain English, those are certain kind of carbohydrates that are absorb water when you eat them. And they tend to be a lot of prebiotic foods as well, like onions, garlic, artichokes, a lot of cruciferous vegetables. So broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale. Those things will really make some people bloat and with major discomfort. And what we're trying to do is starve the bacteria that's inadvertently parked itself in the small intestines rather than the large intestines. And we can do that through food. So we see tremendous results from that. Anybody can do that, but I wouldn't recommend it for everybody because it's a little restrictive. It's those people who are really experiencing chronic bloating, and usually it's coupled with either chronic constipation or chronic diarrhea. And then we have AIP, as you mentioned. That's the autoimmune protocol. So that is what I recommend for anybody with autoimmune. Doesn't matter if you've been recently diagnosed or at some point down the line. If you have family members who have autoimmune, a lot of them, and you feel like, oh, I'm going down that road, it would be great for you to do it. It's just an anti-inflammatory eating lifestyle. So it wouldn't hurt anybody to do it, but I really recommend it for those who have been diagnosed with autoimmune. And you can jump on that anytime, and you can do it. Again, it's an elimination diet, so 30 to 90 days. It's basically paleo, but a little stricter. We remove the nightshades and nuts and seeds and eggs. So it, again, a little restrictive, but you will really quell the inflammation that is ongoing, that cytokine storm. So that is really helpful for anybody, but mostly autoimmune people. And then we have keto, and keto I know is very, very popular, and it seems to stay popular for the last few years. And keto is when you switch your body's fuel source from carbohydrates that turn into sugar to fat. So you're needing to eat about 75 to 85% of your calories every day in fat, and eating pretty much less than 20 net carbs. It will get you into ketosis. And ketosis is great because you're burning that fat for fuel. This is the diet type for all the bacon and egg lovers. You can eat all the cheese you want, and lots of fat, avocado, nuts, lots of meat. Hard to get a lot of fiber in this one because carbohydrates are found in vegetables. And so it's very hard to get enough vegetables that you're getting enough fiber without getting out of ketosis. This is not a diet type that I would recommend for anybody without a gallbladder. It wouldn't be something I would recommend for people who have a hard time absorbing fat. So on a stool test, I test for steatocrit. If your GGT on your blood test is high, this is not for you. It's also very difficult, more so for women. Some women thrive with it, but more women have a struggle with it. Men do great with it, pretty much all men that fit that description. And then people who are really stressed have a lot of cortisol production, mostly women, again, not a great fit for. I personally tried to get into ketosis. It's very difficult for me to get into ketosis no matter what I do. I have to use exogenous ketones to get in there. And I recommend that people use a urine stick to find out if they're in the state of ketosis, because it's very frustrating. And very easy to get out of ketosis, hard to get into it, but it can be very effective. There's a lot of science that proves very good for heart, cholesterol, all that. But it is really aimed at people who have blood sugar dysregulation. So if you have very high diabetes, you have even pre-diabetic, going on ketosis is going to be very effective for you. And again, I don't recommend it longer than 3 months. Some people can go a long time, but I personally, I just see it being more advantageous for people to stop after 3 months, take a break, and then you can get back on. And then we have paleo, and paleo is probably the one that I would say has the broadest appeal. Paleo is eating like our caveman, right? Our carnivores did back in the day, and we're eating quality. It's really focuses on quality animal protein, and then quality vegetables, unlimited vegetables any way you want them, except for deep fried. Sweet potato, yams, good fats, nuts, seeds, eggs, olives, avocado, good oils, good quality. We're trying to, again, decrease that systemic inflammation, increase that good gut health. That will do it for paleo. And it will help with blood sugar regulation. So that is a really good bonus for paleo. I find paleo to be easiest to travel with and to just maintain, and it is a lifestyle. I pretty much follow paleo myself, and I never really go off the grid there. So it's very easy to maintain. Then we have low lectin, and low lectin, lectins are what we call that are under the umbrella of anti-nutrients. We all have our ability to protect ourselves and cope with any kind of danger. Humans, we can flee, bite, scream, kick, yell, call 911. Plants don't have that ability, so they have what I call a hard candy shell around that germ or that seed, and they protect themselves. So they say, if you're going to try and destroy me, I'm going to stay whole as much as possible so I can survive and procreate, our two main goals as living organisms. So it can be very difficult to break them down. And when they get into the system, they cause some inflammation. So this is low lectin. We find these in nightshade. So it's tomatoes of all kinds, peppers of all kinds, except for black pepper, eggplant, and potatoes, except for sweet potato and yams, goji berries as well. So these are foods that are high in lectins. I recommend the low lectin plan for anybody who's just getting off the AIP. I would either say go low lectin or go paleo after that. It's again, it's aimed at being anti-inflammatory and really good for gut health and decreasing systemic inflammation. Those are the two main foundational issues that I believe that are the definition of health, right? Good gut health and no inflammation. And then there's vegetarian or vegan, and there's different types of vegetarians and vegans. I break this down in the book quite in detail. And I believe that pretty much almost all of us should be eating 60 to 80% of our plate should be plants, living things that were pulled from the ground or plucked from a tree. But with vegetarian, there's different types, right? So I find too many times people come into my office being vegetarian or vegan, and I find are on the carbohydrate diet. They're carnivores. They're sustaining on bread, pasta, Oreos, French fries, Diet Coke. These are all vegan, but they are not real food. So I recommend eating plants and eating plant proteins. So that's beans, legumes, nuts, grains a little bit, and vegetables and seeds. Nuts and seeds. I don't know if I said that, but those are the plant-based proteins. And just watch blood sugars, because a lot of people can increase their blood sugars because they're eating so many grains and legumes and carbs.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I agree with your thoughts about paleo being more of a wellness diet and lifestyle. That's also what I follow most of the time. And a few questions. So one question, you mentioned ketogenic. If someone has elevated GGT on the blood test, they probably shouldn't do a ketogenic diet. But is it the same with if someone has elevated AST, ALT on a comprehensive metabolic panel, or that would be okay for them to follow it?
Yeah, so AST and ALT is liver congestion, basically, and it depends how high it is. So if you are confirmed fatty liver, it might be a good idea to do ketogenic, but I would follow your labs and make sure that they're okay. But you should start to decrease that fatty liver. Depends what the source is. If it's alcoholic fatty liver or if it's non-alcoholic, Oftentimes I see it from sugar consumption. So in that respect, for sure, keto would be really, really good for you. GGT is the measurement of how sticky and gooey your bile is that your gallbladder holds. And if your GGT is high, we like it less than 20. So if you're very elevated there, I wouldn't recommend doing keto until you get that down and have some bile salts and have some enzymes that will help you break down that bile, because you will get sick. You will not do well with a high fat diet.
Okay, sounds good. And when it comes to what's the difference between AIP and a low lectin diet? Because autoimmune paleo, autoimmune protocol, as well as just even regular paleo, minimizes the lectin. So is there any difference between? Well, I imagine there is a difference, else you wouldn't have put it in the book.
Yes, there are. So in low lectin, you can eat eggs. In AIP, you cannot. In low lectin, you can eat specific nuts. In AIP, you cannot. Certain seeds in low lectin, no seeds at all in AIP. In low lectin, it is not recommended that you eat cucumbers, or at least the skin or the seeds of that. In AIP, you're perfectly fine with doing that with cucumbers and squashes as well. There's a little bit of alcohol allowed on low lectin and coffee. There is not on AIP. I just sold a bunch of people right there, didn't we? And then there's certain sugars. There's some sugar alcohols that are on low lectin, and they are not on AIP. AIP is really a very strict flushing of any kind of processed foods. The point is to live on plants, animal proteins, good organ meats is encouraged, and a little bit of fruit. In low lectin, it's really only berries and only in season. Very, very little fruit. So AIP has a little bit of fruit on it.
Okay, and how long again do you typically have someone follow AIP for?
AIP is 30 to 90 days. And I would say if you're having flare-ups or noticeable symptoms, I would go as long as you can go to, if you can get to 90 days. I did that when I first discovered AIP. I had been diagnosed with Hashimoto's long before that, but I did it. And you can see numbers. And I work with people all the time who do it, and they see remarkable changes in their flare-ups. So I work with somebody who has Tourette's, and their Tourette's was dramatically down, dramatically. So it is, it's the whole point is to decrease that systemic inflammation, just like low lectin. But I would do that for 90 days, and then I would either hop on low lectin, because it's going to continue to take out those inflammatory foods, or paleo.
And what advice would you give for someone who has been following a vegetarian diet or who's a vegan and they're autoimmune? Ideally, I guess they should follow autoimmune, an AIP protocol, but would you kind of modify the vegetarian diet, the vegan diet?
Yeah, so that's a great question. This is a tricky situation. I'm working with somebody right now who's vegetarian, and I spoke to her yesterday, and she tried eating meat, and she said, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. So I just got her labs back, and her sugars are just starting to come up. She's now insulin resistant, and she's been living on grains and beans and bread a little bit. So I always urge people to get their blood work done so that they can see. I was vegan myself, and the same thing happened. I was just 1/10 of a point shy of being pre-diabetic. And so I stopped immediately, and I brought back in animal protein a little bit. And I just think that it's better for most people to eat that way. But I understand that people want to be vegetarian, and I completely support that. I would just say, watch the grains. Make sure you're having millet, which is low lectin and higher in protein. Quinoa, which is actually a seed, not a grain, but it's higher in protein, lower in carbohydrates, and a little bit of brown rice, which is higher in protein, higher in fiber, and a little bit of legumes. When I was a vegan, there wasn't a salad or wasn't a meal that I wasn't having hummus or black beans or garbanzo beans or lentils. I mean, bring me lentils all day long. I loved it. And it's a great source of protein. but we also get protein from vegetables as well. So it's important to know where your blood levels are, where your blood sugar is, where your protein levels are. So we just always have to make sure you're getting the right proteins. And nuts is a great way, and seeds too, to get some protein and really start to calculate how much protein you're getting so that you understand.
All right, makes sense. And I briefly brought up a scenario earlier where someone has autoimmunity, let's say Graves' disease or Hashimoto's, and they have Sibo. So in that situation, would you have them follow both diets, AIP and low FODMAP, or would you prioritize one over the other?
Yeah, that's another great question. So Sibo is something that I would address immediately. I would do a stool test, make sure there's no H. pylori, which is very common. And I would address the Sibo, because if you kick that can, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's hard for you to heal when you're in this inflamed state. So if you have Sibo, I do a stool test where I can determine if somebody has Sibo, and there's Sibo tests that we do as well. And I treat that. So I'll treat that. There's 3 ways to treat Sibo. One is with an antibiotic, which I don't know that everybody needs. Severe cases may need that. And no matter which way you go, it's not 100% effective for anything. So they're all about 70 to 80% effective. So, and Sibo is very recurring. You may have to do it again. So I do a supplement protocol with a low FODMAP diet, and I keep somebody on that for a good 30 to 60, maybe even 90 days, depending on how bad they are. And the stricter you are at the beginning, the better off you'll be. You're trying to starve that bacteria. And once you starve it and you can kill it with supplements, then you're good to go. I, of course, had that because it's on the list of triggers for autoimmunity. So I'm always looking for root causes. And when I had it, I was pretty one and done. I did it, and it's never come back. But I have tons of patients who will experience recurring Sibo. And it depends on how you eat afterwards, and it depends on how you live. And it's important to get your stool test checked all the time, so you know where you are and where you stand. But if you're bloating, you should absolutely look into that.
And I agree. If I'm working with someone who has Graves or Hashimoto's and they have Sibo, I usually tell them, let's hold off on the AIP. Let's focus on getting rid of the Sibo. And I also agree, usually I try to do the herbs first, the supplements first.
Right.
And there are times when someone will choose the antibiotics, the rifaximin, the Xifaxan, and then there's that elemental diet, which most people won't choose to follow unless if they have a severe case. I mean, if they're, either if nothing else works or if they're just in an extreme situation. And even then, they'll usually go with the herbs. But yeah, so it sounds like we take a similar approach.
Yeah, exactly. And no food for 14 to 21 days is pretty brutal for most.
Yeah, agreed. So in your book, you mentioned that you use and recommend reverse osmosis water, and you told a story why you use reverse osmosis water. So can you share that with the audience?
People should learn from my mistakes, right? So I moved into this home. We were remodeling it pretty much floor to ceiling. And I had this plumber that I worked with for a really long time, and he was great. And I said, I want the best water filtration system you can find. And I had the instant hot, because I do tea. And when I cook, I always want, to drink out of that filter. And then I had my tap water. So he got this great, we did this research, and I was so busy doing all these other things with the house that he said, oh, I got this great, filter, and he put the whole system in, charged me a fortune. And I said, oh, this tastes so good. I was drinking it. I'm pretty good about tasting chemicals, and it tasted really clean to me. So I used this for quite some time. And then one day I thought, I wonder if I can just check it and see how many pollutants are in there and things that are in my water. And I found a meter on Amazon for like $10 or something like that. And I bought it, and I came home. I was so excited. And first I tested the tap water, and it goes up to 900 contaminants. I'm sorry, 500 contaminants. And first I tested the tap water, and it was like 498. And then I said, oh, great, we got a good start. Now let's go to the filtered water. And I did the filtered water, and it was like 494 or 5, something like that, like just shy of that. And I went, what? And I redid it again. And sure enough, it was just a hair below. And I was just devastated. I couldn't believe it. So I immediately got on the horn and I looked into reverse osmosis, and I bought this tank that was not even that expensive. I think at the time I probably paid about $200, and I had it installed under my sink. The problem was it took so much space under that sink, but I said, forget it. If it's good, it's fine. And it was installed. I tested it, and it was at 11 versus 490 something. So I was just absolutely thrilled. So reverse osmosis is, I think, the best water to drink. I think spring water or that's the best water to drink, basically. So that's what I do, is reverse osmosis. That's what I recommend. Filtered water tells us really nothing. It really is just tap water. And it just contains a ton of fluoride. 70% of the water that we get, the tap water we get in the United States, is fluoridated. And fluoride is a halogen that blocks iodine absorption. So not good for a thyroid person. We need our iodine. So I wouldn't recommend chlorine in the water as well. Fluoride, bromide is what we get from breads, usually bromilated wheat. Yeah, so that was an interesting learning lesson.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I also use reverse osmosis in my home. Sometimes I actually commonly drink Mountain Valley Springs water, which is spring water out of a glass bottle as well. But most of the time, it'll be the reverse osmosis. So again, thanks for sharing that. And as far as, well, one other thing also you mentioned in your book. So sugar is the devil. Why sugar is the devil is one of the things you mentioned. And I'm sure a lot of people listening realize that they should avoid sugar. But can you, for those who aren't aware of that, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So first, sugar doesn't really glean any nutrition, right? There's no value to it. So I have these foods that I call food for sport and food for survival. So that would definitely be in the food for sport category that occasionally we would have, right? We don't, it's not a bonus. There's no value to it. So that's number one. Number two is sugar, table sugar, or most kind of sugars, even some natural sugars. They spike our blood sugar levels, right? So we go high, then we go low, and this causes a lot of imbalance in blood sugars, and it causes the pancreas to pump out a lot of insulin. It causes the cells to require an influx of a surge of sugar. And we want to make sure that those receptors that are on those cells to be alive and functioning. We don't want them impaired, which is what happens when we get insulin resistance. The other reason I don't like sugar is it eats up our white blood cells. Our white blood cells are our army, basically. That's our protector. That's our immune system. So even a tablespoon of sugar can deplete your white blood cells about 50% up to 5 hours, right? So if you're feeling that tickle in your throat, you feel like you're coming down with something, I wouldn't recommend sugar at all. You really have no way of fighting if you're going to kill your army, right? Sugar causes a fatty liver. I was talking about that a little bit earlier before. Lots of sugar and carbs will cause a fatty liver without a doubt. Sugar feeds cancer cells. It proliferates cancer cells. It is astonishing to me that in hospitals, when they're giving you chemo, they're giving you Coke. They're giving you brownies, cookies, chips, bread. They're giving you sugar. There's tons of sugar in hospitals. It should be banned. It makes us unwell. Sugar makes us fat. Sugar causes that pancreas to pump out insulin and puts it in the cell. And if we have excess energy for the cell, then it just parks it in fat cells and fat tissues. This is how we get fat, right? To lose weight, we want to give the cell less than it needs, the less sugar. That's our fuel source. So it has no choice but to pull from the storage unit. So sugar makes us tired, right? After that spike, we come down and we're tired. Then we want a coffee, or we want another cookie, or we need another pick-me-up. And sugar comes in many forms, not just in a cookie and a cake, but it comes in your wine glass. It comes in in your lemonade and in your big glass of orange juice. Especially if we take the fiber and the protein out, you're going to spike big time. So I'm not a fan of sugar at all. It tastes good, but we now have so many other things that we can eat that taste sweet, that don't spike our blood sugar levels, that don't cause gastric upset. I'm a big fan of allulose. I use that for all my sweeteners and all my products, my collagen bars, and it's great. It really protects your blood sugar levels.
You mentioned when you speak of blood sugar, some of the testing you mentioned insulin, which I also recommend fasting insulin. You also mentioned C-peptide. What insulin? Which range do you look for? Would be your optimal range as far as
For fasting insulin?
Yes.
Less than 5. So 4.9, 4.7. You can even go down to 3, 3.9, something less than 5.
Okay. And that's what I ideally look for as well. So,
Yeah.
And what other tests do you recommend in your practice?
Yeah. So I do a full comprehensive bioscreen for everybody that I work with. So I'm looking at all 4 markers of your blood sugar. I'm looking at all 9 markers of your thyroid. I'm looking to see if you have reverse T3 uptake, your free and totals, your antibodies. I'm looking at fatty liver. I'm looking at your GFR, your kidney filtration. Looking at, I mentioned GGT. I'm looking at the breakdown of your white blood cells, your eosinophils, your monocytes, your neutrophils, your lymphocytes. I'm looking at your vitamin D levels, of course. I'm looking at the size of your red blood cell. That is your MCV. And I'm looking because that will tell me if you are likely to have MTHFR, if you have methylation issues. So MTHFR is a gene mutation that I commonly test people for. And you should know, excuse me. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. You should know if you have MTHFR. I have it. Both my kids have it, and it's 90% of the population has it. It's 100% genetic, and it just tells us if you're having trouble methylizing your B12 and or your folate. And so you should know which one you have, and just make sure you're taking a methylized B vitamin. So I look at those numbers. I also look at inflammation markers. How do we know how you are if we don't look at inflammation markers? So I always order a C-reactive protein, CRP, cardiovascular inflammation, and just general inflammation. And then I look at homocysteine, which is, again, a methylated marker. But if it gets driven high and it stays high for a long time, we look at dementia, cardiovascular disease, and other things. So I am all about looking at inflammation, systemic inflammation. And then gut health is what I was talking about earlier. I send everybody home with a stool test. So I'm looking at 84 pathogens. I'm looking to see if there's H. pylori. I'm looking to see if there's any pathogens, any parasites. Blastocystis hominis is a root cause of Hashimoto's. If you have these parasites, if you have pathogens in the gut, you have these autoimmune triggers, let's kill them. See if we can reverse this autoimmune situation, right? Whether it's fibromyalgia or colitis or anything. I'm looking at gut health. So I order a zonulin to see if you have leaky gut, leaky brain, right? So I'm seeing an influx of a lot of Parkinson's lately. I'm seeing a lot of brain deterioration. So leaky gut, I'm focusing on big time. I look at if you have fat malabsorption, if you're producing your own digestive enzymes, what your secretory IgA, your immune system is doing in your gut. I'm looking at all those numbers, how inflamed you are in the intestinal linings. Do you have IBS? Or was that just a name your doctor gave because they don't know what else to say? So I look very comprehensively. And then when I look at the breakdown of your white blood cells on your blood test, I can see if there's a viral pattern or a bacterial pattern. If there's a viral pattern, I'm going to do further testing and see if we've got Epstein-Barr virus or cytomegalovirus. Those are also root causes to autoimmune, Hashimoto's, Graves. So I am always looking at those root causes.
All right. No, that sounds good. I order a lot of the same tests. And I also have the MTHFR polymorphism, the C677T. And the way I found out was the elevated homocysteine, which led me to do further testing. So thanks for sharing that. And so finally, can you discuss some of the supplements that you recommend and maybe expand on the RGM detox, like why you recommend it and how it differs from other detoxes?
Yeah, I love my detox. I have made several. I have tried every one on the market practically, and I love this one the best. The reason is because it's fully doable. You can work, you can travel, you can eat. You're having 2 shakes a day. They're collagen based, collagens that grow out for leaky gut. And then I'm always about protein, fat, and fiber. And then you're eating food. So you're eating animal protein, unlimited vegetables, sweet potato, yams, good fats. We stay away from a couple of foods. We're not drinking alcohol for 14 days, and we're not drinking coffee, hopefully, if you can. If you can't, then bring it down to 1 cup and don't put any cancer-causing chemicals in it, and put full fats, non-dairy fats. We're taking out the gluten. We're taking out the dairy. We're removing grains and legumes. But you should have plenty to eat, and it's very good. And people just feel amazing. I mean, I had 2 people yesterday just on the detox said their body aches went away just from the detox. So it really quells that inflammation. It's there to support gut health, get the ball rolling on that, and decrease systemic inflammation. There's a million benefits to it that it's all good. And so that's 14 days. And sometimes I recommend people do it for 28 days if they have fatty liver, or if they just feel good and they're thriving on it. And then I have a line of supplements that I am really picky. I'm super picky about what goes into my body, my kids' body, so I make my own. So like my vitamin D has vitamin K in it for absorption. And I don't have any gluten, dairy, soy, sugar, anything artificial in my supplements at all. I make these amazing collagen chocolate bars that are sweetened with allulose, so they don't spike blood sugar levels. They're low carb, but they're packed with protein, fat, and fiber. They're delicious, and we all need a little something to eat. And then I just have a myriad of products to help with gut, help with blood sugar, help with inflammation. I have a Fab 5 that I have everyone who has autoimmune on. That is vitamin D, my Omega Max, resveratrol with quercetin, turmeric max, and glutathione. Glutathione's our master antioxidant. It helps protect us against any oxidative stress. So that's anything that wants to come into the body and cause disease. That is the Fab 5 that everybody who is autoimmune should be on. If there's thyroid, I have some OptiThyroid, and then I have AI Balance for people with autoimmune, general autoimmune. But I have a lot of all the products that I have are to decrease systemic inflammation and support the body and increase good gut health.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Risa. And where can people find out more about you? Of course, your book on which I assume Amazon is that's where I found it. And but also if you could let people know about your website or any other resources.
Sure. So my book FoodFrame is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Target online. It's also available on my website, which is Risa, R-I-S-A, Groux, G-R-O-U-X, nutrition.com. And you can find me there. You can reach out, set up an appointment. I work with people all over the world. And on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Risa Groux Nutrition. I have a lot of healthy meals, tips. I do a lot of videos, a lot about thyroid. And you can see all the yummy, healthy food that I cook and that I eat and enjoy. And for your listeners, I am offering 10% off the RGN Detox for 3 months after the drop date.
All right, wonderful. Well, I'll make sure to put all this in the show notes. And thank you so much for the interview, Risa. I appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge with the listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here.